Hi, the Mudbrooker here. Seeing as how we're only a few weeks away from Halloween, now seems like a good time to discuss the topic of ghost marks. Before we get into that though, I would like to thank my patrons on Patreon, Kay's Kist, Benedict Riggers, Joy Jones, Damian Bamer, Leo, Theodore Engelke, Valentine Toman, Rudy Valvano, and my newest patron, Kiasby. Here's to you guys. I'm going to have a drink of Drambuie in your honor today. A little more. And I appreciate your support and hope it continues in the future. And if you'd like to join them, feel free. That's good. But, on with the topic. Like I said, Halloween is coming up, but what really prompted this video was a fellow on Facebook who sent me some pictures of a Wagner skillet he had, and he was wondering how old it was. Now, it had a logo that Wagner Ware used from about 1895 to 1915, but there were a few things that didn't quite add up on the pan at first glance. The logo wasn't quite as crisp and clear as it should have been. It was pretty visible. The overall quality of the pan wasn't quite up to the standards that you normally see in a Wagner Ware, and the biggest thing is the pan had a gate mark. A gate mark is a scar on the bottom of a pan that is where the opening in the mold was that allowed the iron in. Now, most manufacturers got away from using gate marks on skillets at least by about 1880. Doing so had a couple of advantages. By removing the gate mark from the bottom and pouring the pans from the rim of the pan, it allowed the pan to sit flatter on a flat top cook stove. And as a manufacturing process, it allowed them to connect together several cavities in one mold and pour several pans at one time, because it only really took as much time to make one mold with one cavity as it would take to make one mold with a dozen cavities, and you could pour many more pans at the same time. With the gate on the rim, you can see a grind mark usually on just about any pan made in the last 125 years. Somewhere near the handle you'll see a spot where it's been ground, and usually on the opposite side, let's see, where is it here, on this one, you'll see a similar grinding mark where there was a vent to release the air from the mold as the iron flowed in. What the man had was a copy of a Wagner Ware pan, probably made by a local blacksmith or a regional foundry. I also have one that's a copy. I showed you this pan earlier in my unknown iron video, and I still don't know who made it, but a little bit more research showed that this is a copy of a first series Erie skillet. Griswold made the first series Erie skillets from about 1880 up to about 1885, and this of course would have been made sometime afterwards, but I now know what they used for a pattern for this pan, even though I don't know who actually made it. Now, the practice of using other people's finished products as a pattern to make your own, like I said, was pretty common amongst small local blacksmiths, small local foundries, and it pretty much died out by 1920 or so. However, one major manufacturer is very well known for having used other people's finished products as a pattern, and that manufacturer is Wapak. There's quite a few examples of Wapak pans that have their logo on it, but they have traces of either Erie, Griswold, or sometimes, like in the case of this pan, Wagner Ware, that they ground off as much of the original logo as they could, tried to fill it in. In this case, you can see right, hopefully, get it up a little closer to the camera and tip it a bit. You can see this area here that's obviously been filled in with something. They call that a butter mark. It's not technically a ghost mark, but Wapak used quite a few different manufacturers, different styles and patterns of pans Early on in their existence, they made pans from about 1903 up to about 1930. And during the first 10 or 12 years, they really did a lot of that sort of thing. Now, a Wapak pan that has a clear, easy to see ghost mark of an Erie or Griswold skillet tends to sell for quite a bit more than one that doesn't. So, in this case, a ghost mark can add quite a bit of value to a pan. The other type of ghost mark you'll see is a manufacturer that has reworked one of their own patterns into something else. Vollrath is quite well known for this. This is a Vollrath skillet, nice white enameled one. And as you can see on Vollrath, the logo is parallel to the handle instead of being at right angles like most are. This doesn't have a ghost mark, it has the full logo on it. But at some point, Vollrath switched over to using just a number on the bottom, and it's also in line with the handle. This doesn't have an actual ghost mark on it either, but it's fairly common to see Vollrath pans with a ghost of the original logo on it and just a number. It doesn't really add a whole lot to the value, but it does make it more interesting. Now, to show you a couple of actual ghost marks, let me get these guys out. This is a Wagnerware pan that I showed you before in I think my reef seasoning video, and I've highlighted the ghost mark a little bit. You can see that faint 9 down below. This is a National Wagnerware, and they reworked the original pattern a little bit, and they added a catalog number, and they moved the size number from the back of the pan onto the handle. This sort of thing is fairly common. Manufacturers would reuse older patterns for other purposes, and it's not something exclusively on very old pans. This was made about 1924, 1925 when they changed the position of the size number and added the catalog number. It's not exclusively on older pans. Sometimes, like you can see on this Wagnerware cornstick pan, you can see the little corn cobs there. This was made after about 1964. You can tell because it says Made in USA on it. But if you look closely, and hopefully I can get a decent angle on that and it'll show up, you can see the ghost of a Wagnerware logo right in here and a clear logo above it. Wagner reused an older pattern, redid the logo on it, and added the Made in USA. So this is from the 1960s, and you can probably find something like that fairly easily. In this case, the ghost mark doesn't really add much value to it, but again, it adds interest. Something else that is also not terribly uncommon is a filled-in letter. This, I also highlighted this a little bit. This is a Wagnerware pan from about 1890 up to 1910 when they used this particular type of logo. This is the same type of logo that was obliterated on that Wapak pan I showed you. But you can see the Wagny is pretty clear on it, but you can just barely see a faint trace of the R, and you can see the quotation marks. Something like that happens when either the pattern or the mold itself gets debris in it and it fills in a letter. There's also cases where the pattern maker misspelled something or transposed letters, or the logo got partially filled in. Things like that may or may not affect the value, but like I said, whatever the case may be, little oddities like that really add to the interest of a pan because it makes it something a little bit out of the ordinary. And if you take a close look at your own skillets, you might find that you've got something with a ghost mark or a little oddity like a filled-in letter. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you for watching.